Yo, what's going on, everyone? Welcome into another episode of Capturing the Games, the Game Within the Game podcast, featuring me, your host, Desmond Jones, and my boy, my co-host, Juwan Stewart. Today, we got another fantastic guest in the books because he already knows another Thursday. But today we have the fantasy editor at NFL.com. His name is Marcas Grant. Marcus, what's going on, man?
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it. I'm looking forward to a new season right around the corner, so we are ready to get it going.
Absolutely, absolutely, no doubt. Yo, Juwan, you ready for your football season?
Yeah, I just had my draft on Sunday, so I'm ready to got my keepers and got my stuff ready, so I'm ready to go. I'm about to see if we made a good team trade or not. We're gonna see.
That's always the question. But yeah, before we even get into any of the NFL stuff, you already know how we do. Marcus, can you go ahead and introduce yourself and tell the audience a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, I've been working at the NFL media for about 10 years. This will be my 11th season. I started back in 2011
Congrats.
there. Thank you. Yeah, I started
Congrats.
back in 2011 there. Before that, I worked in radio for a long time, about 10 years doing sports radio in various forms. I was a minor league baseball play-by-play announcer for a while. I hosted some radio shows. I lived in the California Central Valley, like Fresno, Stockton for a while. I did radio there. Was fortunate enough to get a job doing radio with what was then Sporting News Radio, a national network that was based in Los Angeles. So that allowed me to move to LA, start working there for a while. That sort of evaporated, and then just through the recommendation of a former coworker, he suggested I apply for some stuff at the NFL. So they were always looking for people, especially during the season. So I applied for a bunch of jobs and was fortunate to get an interview during the time in 2011 when there was the lockout happening. And
Oh,
people weren't even
geez.
sure if there was going to be a football season, right? Like people weren't even sure what was going to happen that year. But I interviewed for a fantasy football editor job. I will tell you that at the time I didn't expect that this was going to be a career. Like I played fantasy. I played it just with friends, just to kind of be social and that sort of thing. Didn't ever imagine it would be a job, but it beat being unemployed and sort of freelance writing. And so I was able to get hired in 2011. And, fortunately, 10 years later, here I am. I've been able to expand the job beyond just writing, and doing podcasts, doing the Fantasy Live show on NFL Network. It has been an unexpected ride, but it's been a pretty good ride so far.
Like he said, congrats on the 11th season, and that's a milestone for especially with just how sports industry is, jobs shifting left and right and all that. Especially you came in during the lockout, that wouldn't have been a good first impression on a job. Like, I don't know if I'm gonna be here too long at this rate, type of thing.
Mm-hmm.
But tell us about the fantasy side. Let's get into the football side of things. Like when you go into creating a article or writing an article for fantasy football, what goes into that process?
Well, I mean, basically, it's just, for us, there's no such thing as the off season, right? Everybody always asks,
Right.
like, well, what do you do in the off season? And I just sort of laugh. I'm like, it doesn't, there's the time when they're playing games, and then there's the time when they're not playing games. And so we're always sort of studying, right? You're either watching tape, you're looking at stats, you're just sort of like talking to other people who do this job. There's a lot of communication between analysts and writers from other platforms, right? I mean, I'm friends with people who work at places like Yahoo, and a lot of smaller outlets, and
Mm-hmm.
people who work at NBC. And so it's just always sort of trying to study football and study the game, and reading a lot of actual beat writer articles, and keeping up with that sort of thing. So I know for a lot of people, this is the time of year when they're starting to pay attention to football again, right? And so for a lot of people, they're starting to catch up on, hey, where did so and so get drafted? Or hey, Julio Jones got traded to Tennessee. Like, all right, let me keep up with this sort of stuff.
Right.
Our thing is keeping up with this all year long. So like we're sort of up to our eyeballs in fantasy, and so like that is always, so we're always trying to find angles. We're always trying to find, hey, what does this coaching change mean for these players? Or now that somebody got drafted, what does it mean for the Jaguars now that Trevor Lawrence is their quarterback? So it's always just trying to keep up with what's new and what's happening, and then try and flip that into information that people can use when they're drafting their fantasy team.
Now I'm gonna ask you, now I drafted my team on Sunday. Okay. Now we'll discuss that later, but I'll let Desmond say his next question. But I'm gonna ask you my team, and I'm gonna see how you think the grade should be versus what. Cool. All right. Go ahead, Desmond. Go ahead.
No, go ahead. Drop your team in there.
Okay. All right. Well, then I'll do it right now. Okay. So I drafted Jalen Hurts as my quarterback.
Okay.
I had two keepers of Aaron Jones and James Robinson.
Mm-hmm.
Tyler Lockett, another receiver. Calvin Ridley, TJ Hawkinson, Damian Harris, and then I got Jameis Winston as a backup. Devin Singletary, James White, Antonio Brown, Mike Gesicki, and then I got the Colts kicker. Can't even say his last name.
Blankenship.
Blankenship. Yep.
The dude with the glasses. Yeah.
The glasses guy. Yeah. Yep. And then I got the Ravens defense and the Dolphins defense. Thoughts on
team.
that?
That's a good team. I love Jalen Hurts at quarterback. He's a guy that I've been drafting in a lot of spots, especially because you can get him in sort of the 9th round. Your keepers, Aaron Jones, a great keeper. James Robinson, that's sort of his. I liked James Robinson. It looks a lot better now. Unfortunately, Travis Etienne gets hurt. That sucks. But in terms of James Robinson, that certainly makes it better for him. So that's going to work out well. I think we had Tyler Lockett and Calvin Ridley. Yeah. Calvin Ridley, I think, is going to have a huge year this year. I liked him anyway, but especially with Julio gone, I think he has a huge year. I think TJ Hawkinson I've got as a top 5 tight end this year. Okay. So, just on paper, this is a playoff team. I think you got a good squad right there.
Okay. That's good. That's good to hear. That's all I knew. I've been trying my last 2 seasons, I was struggling. I had to tank one year because it was just bad because I had Kittle got hurt. I had to trade him off, and then it was bad. It was just a bad year. My only highlight was Aaron Jones was the highlight of my season.
Yeah, sometimes the thing about it, I always tell people that you can study and you can prepare and you can try to figure out what's good. But once the games happen, it's out of your hands at that point. Yeah. You can prepare all you want, but stuff like George Kittle getting hurt or some guy just, having a bad year that you just didn't foresee. That's sort of the element of this that makes it fun. If we knew for sure what was going to happen, it just wouldn't be nearly as fun.
Right. Because I had T.Y. Hilton as well as another he was my keeper the season before, and he did literally nothing last year until the last 5-6 games. I was like, well, thank you, T.Y. Thank you.
Yeah. So I haven't had my draft yet, but my draft is coming up. But right now my keepers are Justin Jefferson, Tremaine Edwards, and Cole Kmet.
It's funny. I kind of like Cole Kmet, and I don't think people have talked about him enough this offseason. I liked him last year, and I just, Jimmy Graham has had a great career, but it's pretty much at its end right now. And I think Kmet is sort of the future there in Chicago at the tight end position. So, I think he's a sleeper sort of in waiting. So I'm curious to see what happens because I think he's due for some big things this year.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. So my only skepticism is that, so I'm a Bears fan. I grew up in Chicago. I just fear for the offensive line and also just fear for just Matt Nagy in general because his offense ain't been putting up points. They have switched, offensive coordinators midway through the season. They had went through everything. They're not even starting off the season with the best quarterback on the team right now. They started with Andy Dalton, which that's a whole nother conversation. But it's all these factors into why I think Cole is not going to get the reps, or he's not going to turn into a season that it should be.
I hope that's not the case. But look, here's the thing: even with Andy Dalton, that's probably the best quarterback they've had in a long time. I know everybody wants to see Justin Fields, right? Everybody wants to see Justin Fields. I want to see Justin Fields, but still, all things considered, Andy Dalton's probably better than anybody they've had in a few years.
Oh, that's hot. Okay.
Oh, the Chicago fan has something to say about that. I'm sure. Go ahead, say what you got to say. Get it all out. Get it all out, please. Get it all out. Go ahead.
Oh man, that's tough. I don't, man. It's as harsh as that is, because Andy Dalton is all right, a top 20 quarterback in the league at best, and that's probably. I don't even think I could say that now because I'm sure I could probably route off at least about 15 better quarterbacks than him right now. But that's tough because we also talk about Chicago where Chicago ain't never really had great quarterbacks.
No. I get it. Like, he's not exciting. I'm not gonna sit here and pretend like he's exciting. Justin Fields is way more exciting. But and I think before the year is out, Fields is going to start. I wouldn't be surprised if it happens by like week 4. I think, week 1 they got the Rams. I don't think you want to put your rookie back there and have him chased around by Aaron Donald.
I'm good off that.
Week 3 is the Browns. I mean, same thing with Myles Garrett chasing him around. I don't think that. But then, like, once they hit week 4, and I don't remember off the top of my head, but they've got, starting from week 4, they got like 4 games in a row that are very winnable, that against defenses that aren't very good on paper. So I think, you let Dalton stand back there and take his lumps for the first 3 weeks. And then you put Fields in when the schedule gets a little bit softer, and you see what the rookie can do.
Oh man, so I don't know, man. I'm just at this place where, man, you just play the kid, man. Just put your best out there. You're trying to win games. You're trying to save your jobs. Like, just go ahead, just put the kid out there. Like, there's no sense of trying to bubble wrap him and protect him. Can't protect him all his life. Like, everyone's always going to play from being hurt. So I don't know. This is how way I feel right now.
So okay, wait. I got a question. Since I'm a Patriot fan now, before I say this, because I'm a little hurt that they still did this, but with Cam Newton being released, like, do you see Mac Jones as a sleeper quarterback now, or like, does he have tremendous upside from a fantasy standpoint, for that matter?
He is a backup quarterback in fantasy at best right now. Here's the thing. No, and look, I think there are guys that are good real football players where it doesn't necessarily translate to fantasy.
It's fantasy, right.
And I think that's what you're going to get out of Mac Jones. What I saw from him in the preseason, there were times when he looked really, really good, but he's also going to have growing pains. I mean, that's just a fact. It's not exciting that they still need help at wide receiver. I mean, Nelson Aguilar played well last year. I know Jacoby Myers has shown some things, and even N'Keal Harry, when he was healthy in the preseason, played pretty well. I just don't think that's going to be enough. Maybe Jonnu Smith and Hunter Henry can really help out a lot. So, but I think the thing with Mac Jones is, if this defense comes back, and they got people coming back, I mean, they had a lot of people who sat out last year because of COVID, right? They're getting people back. So if this defense can be good, then all they need from Mac Jones is to not screw it up, right? Like, you don't have to be Tom Brady. You just have to not screw this thing up. And I think Mac Jones is certainly good enough to do that. And I think he's better. I think he's good enough to, if they need him on occasion to pull one out of the fire, I think he can do that every once in a while. So, this year, I think for fantasy, we're not really talking about Mac Jones, but I think, if he progresses and becomes the quarterback they think he can, I think next year we are talking about him as maybe being a potential starter.
Makes sense.
How did you, so when you entered into fantasy football, like I picture you like at the top of fantasy football right now. It's like at least the top, how has that like journey been like for you, like covering fantasy football and just covering the game and overall? Like, I know you mentioned about just following up with beat reporters, but like I don't know, what's that day-to-day grind like?
Well, this is the time of year when it starts to get serious. I would say it starts kind of in mid-July, like when training camps open. That's when it really gets serious. In the off season, it's a little more lax. I mean, you're paying attention to the draft and free agency and stuff like that, but there's just not that intense sort of grind on it. Nowadays we start doing our show on NFL Network. I get up in the morning. Depends on the day. I may have a podcast to do. We do our own podcast a couple times a week. We'll have a pre-production meeting sometime in the morning, and then I'm just sort of researching whatever it is we're talking about. I'm researching stats, and I'm looking up news reports, making sure guys are healthy or who might be missing games, and just trying to figure out what that means for those guys. So generally, I am sort of grinding and researching from about 11 o'clock in the morning till we go on air at 3. That's all Pacific time. We go on air at 3 o'clock, do our show until 4, and then in the past, like sometimes I have to write an article, sometimes I may be doing some research at night. I'm trying to do less of that, But I mean, but sometimes that's just kind of what it is during the season. And I mean, it really is 5-6 days a week. It's just sort of repetitive, kind of like that. It's why it's sort of nice that once we get to the end of the season, usually once we hit January, everything kind of slows down and you can kind of take some more time for yourself. But it is, and it's been it's been sort of interesting over the 10 years I've been doing this, in that the industry itself has grown exponentially. I mean, there are so many more people doing this now than when I started. And what has made that, I think what it's good in the sense that you get a lot more voices involved and you get a lot of really smart people doing a lot of really smart things. But it also means, like for me, I got to keep up with what everybody else is doing, right? Like I got to keep up with people who are way into analytics, right? Like I'm not a super stat guy, but I at least have to learn it enough that I can talk to those people, right? And I'm not a guy who's sitting here and I'm not grinding film all day and all night, but I do understand it enough that I can sort of point things out when it needs to be. And so for me, what I kind of want to do is, working for the NFL, we get a lot of people who play fantasy for us that aren't necessarily hardcore. They're not the people that are out there, spending $1,000 to get in a fantasy league and trying to win big money. A lot of folks who play with us, they're just people who, like, they're in a league with friends and family, or they're in an office league and they just don't want to look foolish. They just want to know enough that they can be competitive. And so for me, I feel like my job is to take all the really high level, smart things that people across this industry are doing and being able to present them in a way that the average person who isn't, up to their neck in fantasy, for the person who just logs on in August and like, hey, I got to figure out what to do for my draft. I want to be able to take all those really smart concepts and boil them down into a phrase or into a method that people can understand and apply. And again, maybe they may not be out there trying to dominate their league. They just don't want to look dumb. Right. And so like, I just want to be able to present that in a way that's informative and hopefully entertaining for people.
Makes sense. So I see you are a 49ers fan. Is that what I'm seeing back there?
I grew up in the Bay Area. I'm a 49er fan. I have a soft spot in my heart for the Raiders, but like since what, in my lifetime, the Raiders have left Oakland twice. So like I love Raider fans because they are diehard and they are loyal, even if the team doesn't always love them back.
Yeah, true. So over or under 5 games for Garoppolo playing?
I'm going to go over, but just barely. I'm going to say 6 for him. So just barely. I think it's similar to Justin Fields, right? Like I think at some point Lance is going to be the starter there in San Francisco. Not completely sure when, but I think we're going to see him before the year is out. I think we'll see Fields before we see Trey Lance, just because I think Garoppolo is slightly better at his job than Andy Dalton is at his job. So that gives him a couple extra weeks, I guess.
Okay.
That's fair. That's fair. So I know that you still write a lot. Does people still like read and consume articles the same way that they did 10 years ago? Because I feel like, and this is just me throwing it out there, but I feel like writing is one of those lost things that people just don't do nowadays. Like people's more into either videoing or podcasts, and just not a lot of people read or consume things like that. So, I mean, how is it still writing in today's age?
I'll be honest, I don't think people read as much as they did before, but I think there's still a market for it. And I think especially when you talk about, I always think of fantasy football sort of as a science experiment in a way. And you have what we do during the week, whether it's written or podcast or video or what have you. These are sort of us putting together our scientific theories of what's going to happen and what sort of players are going to be successful and what teams are going to be successful. And then Sundays are basically the experiment, right? Where we take our theories and we put them to work and we see whether we were right or we were wrong. And then we come back and we revise and we do what we need to kind of make it sound better. But I think where there's still definitely a market for the written word, especially in the off season, is some of those higher level theory pieces, right? Where you can sort of dive into, stats and analytics and that sort of thing. Like, I think what's hard now, because we do so much analytical stuff and so much predictive statistics, it's a lot harder for me in a podcast or on a video to just start spitting numbers at you and have it sink in. If I just sat here and started talking to you about, yards after contact and air yards and, all sorts of DVOAs and high level stats, if I just sit here and spit numbers at you, you're going to kind of glaze over and most of it won't catch on. I think it's a little bit easier to digest that written, and at least, the people that I talk to, just the diehards and the fans who do this all year long, they say that they still do enjoy some of those long form written pieces in the off season when they have a little more time to digest them, and they can kind of dive in. But yeah, I think I don't know that necessarily there's as much appetite for it. Like if I'm going to do a piece of the top 10 picks off the waiver wire for the week, I could very easily do that in a TikTok video because people just want to see the names, right? Like if I'm going to tell you who are guys to pick off the waiver wire, maybe you're into the reasons why. More realistically, you probably just want to know, like, hey man, I got 10 minutes, while I'm on lunch here, who do I pick up off the waiver wire? I can do that for you in a TikTok video that takes 15 seconds, and you can pick out a couple of names and just be on your way.
Yeah, that does make sense. So I guess it kind of boils down to, what's the best method to deliver whatever you're trying to communicate.
Yeah, exactly.
So okay. Yeah, I know you spent time. So I'm curious to hear about like your time being the play-by-play announcer for a minor league team, because I know like minor league ain't always what it cracked up to be, especially depending on the team and just the money and the resources that the team gets and stuff. So what was that time? And I know this is like over 10 years ago, but I love baseball, and so I'm just curious to hear about that play-by-play perspective, especially since the fact that now these things are coming out about these players and how the way that they're being treated, in the minor league systems.
Yeah, well, it's not lucrative. You're not gonna get rich doing it. You do it because you love it, and you do it because you're hoping that it builds into something else. And for me, baseball was always my first love with sports. And I remember in college, we did, for the student radio station, we did play-by-play. I went to USC and we did USC sports, football, baseball, basketball, all of them. And I remember when when I was just about to graduate, I had tapes from like some of the college games I did, and it was long enough ago that I was actually physically sending out cassette tapes, right? Like it wasn't, you weren't sending digital files via email. Like I was sitting in my room, like dubbing copies of actual cassette tapes and like putting them in padded envelopes and sending them off to teams. That's how long ago this was. And I ended up eventually getting a job in 2001 with the Visalia Oaks, a small team in Central California, like just south of Fresno. They were a high Class A team. They were part of the Oakland A's system. And you do it because it is sort of fun, but it is a grind, right? Like especially because you're playing, at that time you're playing 140 games, and you are, you're in small towns mostly at that level. You're on bus rides. I will say this: I was in the California League, and I was fortunate that in the Cal League, the longest bus ride is 8 hours. Like that's it. There are other leagues out there. I've had friends who worked in some other leagues, like up in the upper Midwest, like the Pioneer League, where like 8 hours was like their shortest bus ride, right? They would have bus rides that were like 16, 18 hours. Right. It's just, it's awful. Like you're on a bus, and it's like, there are days when it's a lot of fun, right? Because at the end of the day, you show up at the ballpark and you watch a baseball game, and you eat hot dogs, and they're paying you for it, and it's all good. The days that it's hard are, it's August, and your team is 15 games out of first place. You're not going to make the playoffs. It's 95 degrees in Bakersfield, and there's not going to be anybody in the stands. There's no energy. Like there are days where you're like, what am I doing? Like why am I here?
Why did I pick this?
Right, exactly. I mean, like you don't make me. I would say this: my first year doing this. Well, actually, let me back up a little bit, because I actually did sort of a radio internship one summer when I was still in college. I moved out to Massachusetts, a small town called Lynn, just outside of Boston. And was basically a glorified intern. I ended up living in an apartment. I lived in an apartment, a 2-bedroom apartment with 5 other players, right? It was me and 5 other players in this 2-bedroom apartment. We all had air mattresses that we bought from Walmart for like $20, and that's what we slept on. I remember when I left before the season ended because I had to go back to school, and I think I just sold my air mattress for like $10 to like a pitcher who had just gotten signed or something like that. But even that first year in Visalia, they paid me $500 a month. They took care of my housing, but I made $500 a month. I tried to save my per diems when we went on the road, although admittedly I spent a lot of it on beer. But like I wasn't making any money. I was just really hoping that it grew into something else. I mean, my dream at that time was to be the radio voice of the Dodgers. They had a dude named Vince Scully who hung on forever and ever and ever. He crushed the dreams of a lot of kids who were looking for that job because he was so good, and he never retired for years and years and years. But I still look back on it fondly. Like I still sort of have memories about it. But like, yeah, I don't tell people like if that's what you want to do, understand that you're not going to make a lot of money at the beginning, and it's going to be a lot of work. Because you're not just the radio announcer too. A lot of places you're the radio announcer. I was also the media relations guy. I mean, I had one year where I was a part-time clubhouse manager, and I had to do laundry. There was a time when I was like the merchandise guy and had to like set up stuff in the souvenir stand. You work for these small teams, you do a lot of different things, so it can be a grind, and you know, folks burn out easily. So you really got to want it if you're going to stay in that industry.
I think that's cool that you break it down all the way. Cause I mean, from an outside perspective, I mean, I like baseball, but I don't know like the minor league level. Like we have a team here in Indiana and Fort Wayne, 10 caps, but you know, knowing the behind the scenes stuff of like, yeah, you know, there's multiple people doing multiple jobs. It's like, I guess I never would have pieced those two together. You're like, why would you be doing laundry if you're the voice person? Like, well, that doesn't make sense.
Yeah, I mean, that's rare, but that was also because we had our clubhouse guy just randomly up and quit on us like a couple weeks into the season. So me and another guy in the front office, we just, you know, I don't know if we volunteered or somebody volunteered us. I'm not exactly sure how it happened, but yeah. So like I would, you know, sometimes I would do radio, and as soon as I was finished with the broadcast, I'd run down and I'd grab the uniforms, and I would try to find a laundromat, or what I would also do, sometimes I would just pay the other team's clubby, like, here's $100. Can you do our laundry for the next couple days? Because I got stuff to do. So you find ways to be creative in that job.
That's efficient. I also call it voluntoed.
Right. There you go.
Voluntoed. We'll start using that one. That's a good one. I'm gonna use that.
Voluntoed. That's right.
Wow. So I guess another question would be like, have any of those players that you had interactions with, have any of those players made it professionally that you know of, or even top, AAA maybe, something, whatever?
The guys that I had on my teams, I did 2 seasons of it. There were a couple guys that made it for small amount. We had a guy when I was in Visalia, a guy named Marshall McDougal, who he made it up with the Texas Rangers for a little bit. I was in Stockton for a year, and I'm trying to remember who we had. We had a couple of pitchers. We had a guy named Dustin Mosley, who I think might have made it with the Red Sox for a little bit. He was a starter with us. I think by the time he got to the majors, they had moved him to be a reliever. I think he made it there. And there's another guy we had, a guy named Steven Smitherman, who's a really cool story. Really huge dude from Oklahoma. Outfielder, decent power hitter. And in Oklahoma, they don't have any Major League Baseball teams.
Right.
And he had always said, he's like, I've never been to a Major League Baseball game. He said the first one, he's like, I never plan to go to a Major League Baseball game until I'm playing in one. And he ended up getting he didn't stay very long, but he ended up getting a cup of coffee in the major leagues. I think might have been with the Cincinnati Reds, if I remember right. But I just remember seeing his name in a box score, and I was like, I felt really happy for the dude. I'm like, dude, I hope this was the first game you ever got to go to. Like, I really hope that you made your thing happen. Like I said, he didn't last very long, but I really do hope that actually worked out for him, because that was always a cool story to me.
Right. That's dope.
That is dope, man. It's always good to see those people that you just like so have to be like chilling with or hanging out with, and you see them go on to do big things and great things.
Yeah. I mean, it's like the guy from the Tin Caps. I mean, I didn't even realize that Fernando Tatis Jr. played for the Tin Caps. Like I didn't realize
Yeah,
that.
I didn't know that
I
either. I
didn't
was
realize
like,
that. I
he
didn't
played
realize that.
there. I was like,
Yeah, I was like,
Yeah.
that's crazy. I could have been seeing that and didn't know that that's the guy playing for the Padres right now that I
Yeah.
actually like to look at. Like, like
well,
crazy.
and it's funny too, because there are people in minor league cities. I mean, like the people who like really go, and they do kind of like, they keep up with these players. I mean, like you'll see like the diehards, right? Like every minor league team, every minor league city has like some fans who are like probably in their 60s, 70 years old, who've been going to games for 20 years. And usually what they do is at the beginning of the year, they get every player's autograph, and every new player that comes through, they get their autograph because odds are some of these dudes are going to make it, and a couple of them are going to be stars. I mean, it's been a long time since I was doing it, but some of the guys I saw come through, I mean, I saw Jake Peavy, who had a great career as a pitcher in the major leagues. I saw him play. Xavier Nady, who was a really good hitter, who came up, and I saw him play. Josh Hamilton, right, who was a stud for a number of years. I interviewed him. He was in Bakersfield for like 3 weeks. Like, like some of these guys, like I saw Max Scherzer play in Visalia, right? It was like, it was the kind of thing where like some of these guys, that they're just not going to be there long, because they're really, really good. So it's like when a Max Scherzer comes through, you're like, yeah, you guys might want to come see this dude now, because he's not going to be here very long. He's going to be in the major leagues in a couple of years, right? So it's stuff like that where like, yeah, at the time you don't think about it. And the other part of it is you kind of get a chance to kind of get to know these guys a little bit. Like you don't get to do that at the major leagues. It's harder. When they're playing in the minors, you can talk to them. You can talk to them after a game. Depending on how big your town is, you might run into them at the grocery store or at a bar or something like that. You can kind of talk to these guys. Whereas, nowadays, trying to get close to Fernando Tatis Jr., probably a little bit harder than when he was like hanging out in Fort Wayne,
Exactly.
Yep. Do you have any advice for people that is trying to make it in the sports industry, whether it's in radio broadcasting, sports analysis, or just anything in general? You can either pick an avenue and kind of run with it, or just feel free to flow.
Yeah, no, I think it's regardless of what you're trying to do, I think it's all the same. And I think it's really just to do it. And I say that in the sense of now versus when, I graduated from college way back in the 1900s. that now you have so many avenues, right? Like that everybody can do a podcast or a live video stream, right? That anybody can set up a YouTube channel. You can have your own social media accounts. You can do all these things. You can start a blog. Those things didn't really exist when I was in college. And even when I was kind of starting out, like the way to do it then was you had to intern somewhere, and then you had to, send out tapes and resumes or written clips, and you had to hope somebody hired you. And chances are, if they did, it was going to be in some small market in the middle of nowhere. It was going to be, you were going to be covering either, if you wanted to do sports, right? You were going to be covering probably high school sports somewhere, right? And you were probably going to be covering low-level high school sports, right? Like you weren't going to get like the big powerhouse high school in your town. You were going to get the team that, might just win 1 or 2 games in your town. Now you can sort of like, there's so much more information that's readily available via social media and the internet. And there's so many ways for you to put your work out there. And the ups and downs that you can put it out and a lot of people can see it. But the other part of it is when you're starting out, like it's a chance for you to make mistakes and kind of, work through some things that you couldn't. Like if you were working professionally in a small market and you screwed up badly, like chances are you get fired. Like nowadays, if you do something and it's dumb and you get roasted on the internet, I mean, you can probably delete it, and prevent a lot of people from seeing it. But it's a chance just to kind of make your mistakes. And so I just tell people now that take advantage of all the technology and all the platforms that are available to you to kind of get out and do that sort of thing. Also, network. Social media makes it great for networking, whether it's LinkedIn or it's Twitter or any sort of things. you can find a community of people that are also doing it and that are also sort of new to it, and you can sort of build those bonds and kind of form those friendships and kind of help pull each other along the way. So I feel like there are so many more avenues now, which maybe is why there's so many more people trying to do it. But I say like the best way to do it is literally to just do it. I know I sound like a Nike ad, but yeah, just do it.
That definitely popped up in my head too. But I mean that I think you hit it. You said best. The best way to get better or just to even enter or get into the industry is just to do it. Practice. We do have so many different avenues and revenues to do things. We have Google. I call it Google University. You have Google University at the palm of your hands. Just utilize it.
No, you're right. I mean, I've learned so many. Look, from like big things like how to do home projects to like how to tie a bow tie to whatever. Like if I got a problem, I will Google it, I will YouTube it, and try to figure out how to make it work.
Look,
and if you can't find one of those two,
you probably
go to Amazon. You get the A to Z, because then they can just send it to you. It's already done, and you just do whatever you got to do. So there you go. That's exactly what it is right there. Those three.
But yeah, Marcus, I think that wraps up our first part of our segment. So we can go ahead and jump into our rapid fire segment where we just ask little silly questions and just kind of get your opinion, get your takes on things. So my question for you is, are you ready to play?
Let's do it.
All right. First question is chocolate chip cookies or oatmeal raisin?
Chocolate chip. Raisin cookies feel like a lie. It feel like a lie. Like I look at it like, oh, it's a chocolate chip. You bite it and you're like, oh no, I feel like I've been lied to.
Yes, another. That's all I gotta say. I'm keeping track of this, by the way. So the last 4 people have said chocolate chip. The one person said oatmeal raisin. So that's all I'm gonna say. That's all I'm saying.
They're liars.
No, that's no. So TV shows or movies?
Which do I prefer? Probably movies. It's I feel like when I start a new TV show, like I got to look and see how many seasons there are of it, because it feels like a commitment. Like a movie, right. I just do 2 hours, 2.5 hours, and like I'm out. I'm on to the next thing. Like a TV show feels like a commitment.
Gotcha. So what's your favorite movie, or one of your? Give me your top five.
Ooh, man. Top 5. I would think Kill Bill is in there.
Quentin Tarantino's.
Okay. Yeah, Kill Bill's in there. The Big Lebowski is definitely one of them. I mean, I guess, if I got to own my nerddom, I got to put Star Wars in there. Wow, what else do I really like? That's 3. So I'm gonna go Pulp Fiction, just because I remember the first time I saw it, it just sort of changed the way I thought about movies. So I guess I got 2 Tarantino movies in there.
Yeah.
And if I'm gonna go with a 5th one, what am I gonna go with? I'm gonna say, what am I talking about? Into the Spider-Verse. Like, how am I forgetting that one? Miles Morales, man. I got Miles Morales back up here behind me, man. He's my spirit animal, man. How could I gotta put Into the Spider-Verse in there. So there you go.
Okay. Cool.
That's Into the Spider-Verse. Yeah, Into the Spider-Verse is iconic, man. Like,
it's great. It's amazing.
They're coming out with a number 2, I heard.
I know. I'm curious. Like I mean, I will definitely see it, but I'm also like, the first one was so good. Like, maybe we just leave it alone. Like, I don't know.
I agree with that. So speaking of, the nerddom, because that's where I come in at. So I got like 3 questions probably, but one thing I was gonna ask you, it was I'm probably expand to either top 5 or 10, your choice, of either favorite Marvel or DC characters. And then I also was curious to see what you're currently reading as far as comic book wise, and what some of your favorite comic book stories.
So I'll give you 5 characters. I mean, Spider-Man is for sure number 1 for me.
So Peter Parker or the Miles Morales version, like which Spider-Man we talking about?
So Miles Morales is number 1 for me.
Okay.
But Peter, I'll put Peter Parker at number 2. Because I think they're both similar in the sense that they were they were regular people who had regular lives, right? Like, I mean,
Right.
with Peter and Miles, like, they're trying to figure out school and trying to figure out how to make girls like him. And like Peter Parker had a job with a boss who was a jerk. I mean, like he had regular people problems.
Yeah.
Sort of like the rest of us. So I'll give you those will be two. I'll say, I'll put Captain America at number 3. I mean, he was super powered. Of all the things that the super serum gave him, I think his greatest superpower was just his sense of justice and goodness. That he always tried to do the right thing. And even before he got the super serum, Steve Rogers was just a dude always trying to do the right thing. And that to me was maybe his greatest superpower of all of them. Let's see, where else am I gonna go? See, that's 3. I'll give you the Flash, just because like I thought, especially in the DC movies weren't great, but I thought he was kind of funny. And where else do I go? Deadpool. I'll give you Deadpool.
That's a hidden gem.
Deadpool's a hidden gem, and he's not for the kids. Like Deadpool's not for the kids, but I do like Deadpool. So as for what I'm reading now, I just finished All-Star Superman, which was a few years old, but was really, really good. It's just like, it's kind of bonkers. Like I think Superman is, I won't say boring, but like he is very goody all the time. But this, they had some kind of bonkers stories in here that were kind of amazing. I'm just starting a volume of Miles Morales stuff. I also kind of I go outside the Marvel DC world, and I read a lot of Image comics.
Same here.
So some of my favorite ones, like Saga, is amazing. And I'm sad that it's on hiatus. It ended like on a shocking note, and now it's like on hiatus and it may never come back. So I'm like, but Saga was great. I finished East of West maybe a few months ago, which was another absolutely amazing one. I'm kind of a fan of certain writers. Like Rick Remender is a guy that I love anything that he writes. So he's done Black Science. He did some Uncanny X-Men for Marvel for a while. He's got a new thing out called The Scumbag, which is sort of funny and kind of amazing too. So I got a few things. I got a few things on the wish list that I haven't bought yet, but that's kind of what I'm doing at the moment.
Gotcha. Yeah, one of the things that I'm currently reading through is the Excellence story. I forget who the writer is. I just picked up on this story called Radiant Black, and then also picked up on this other story called Everfrost. Those are some of the comics that I'm reading outside of like the like Marvel stuff. Like I'm big on the X-Men run that Jonathan Hickman is doing right now. So I'm really big into that. Another story that I loved was the Far Sector. It was about the Black woman Green Lantern.
Oh, okay.
So that's been also pretty dope. So there's a lot of just different like comic books out there that I just love and enjoy reading.
Well, have you read the most recent iteration of Kick-Ass, where Kick-Ass is now a Black woman?
No, I have not.
Yeah, Kick-Ass is now a Black woman. I think she lives in like Albuquerque or something like that. So you should check that out.
Wow, that would probably be hilarious to read.
Yeah.
About to say, yeah, I'm not. I mean, I know about some comics, but I'm not that big into the comics. Like, I mean, I look at Dragon Ball Z, the Boondocks, stuff like that. Like those, they have comics.
Oh yeah, no, I watch anime. I watch One Piece. I will say this: I kind of came to comics a little bit later in life.
Same here.
The first one I read was Watchmen. I remember I was having a conversation with a coworker. And I was saying that I know people didn't like the movie. That I liked the movie, I think, more than most. And he was like, "Well, have you read the book?" And I said, "No." And he's like, "Well, let me, here, I will let you borrow it." And I read it, and it blew my mind enough that I bought my own copy. I'm like, yeah, I got to have my own version of this. So that sort of was what started me on the path. And like, I went to Image because it was easier to kind of find a place to start. Like the thing about Marvel and DC, like Superman, Batman, even Spider-Man to a point, it's sort of intimidating. It's intimidating to start a Superman. Like, where do I start? There's 90 years, 100 years worth of stories. I don't know where to start. And so I've very slowly kind of eased my way in. I've read a few Batmans. I've read some, I can't remember what it is. It's was kind of like a horror comic almost. It was a little too intense for me, this version of Batman. But it's just trying to find that entry point is sort of hard when you haven't been doing it your whole life. And you're like, you walk in the store and you're like, hey, I want to read some Superman. And then there's like, a whole room.
They're
like,
which one?
Right. Exactly. So you're like, I don't know. So like that part is like, I'm still kind of diving into that a little bit.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, go ahead. No. With the Miles Morales, I would say that was a good entry point because he was a newer character that kind of just bursted on the scenes. And then, that would have been a good, like you said, a good entry point to go into it for sure.
Yeah, no, really. And like, I mean, I knew Spider-Man from the cartoons growing up, right? Like, know, like especially like the 60s Spider-Man, like all that one. Like, but so like that at least that kind of gave me an idea. But yeah, when Miles Morales hit, I was like, well, like, I'm totally doing this. Like, I'm absolutely jumping into this.
Yeah, that's been my problem. I started collecting or doing comics about 3 years ago, and sometimes it's hard to keep up with all the stuff that's going on.
Oh, there's so much.
It's a lot of it's a lot of great content. So
much.
But I'll probably send you. I don't know. I'm gonna send you an email with some comics.
Okay, cool.
Okay. Rewind, bringing it back. Okay. So if you had to pick, would you go Tom Brady or Peyton Manning?
I mean, in terms of just success on the field, it's probably Tom Brady. I'm just sick of him winning. I'm just sick of it. Like
I saw you deflate when you said that. Like,
I know. It's like I mean, like, yeah, I just it's hard, right? You can't really go against Tom, right? I mean, dude's got 7 championships. I mean, and I say this as a guy, like Joe Montana was the quarterback of my youth, right? Like I grew up watching him, and for me, he was always the GOAT. And I've had to sort of grudgingly admit that it's probably Tom Brady now. So like I want to be a hater, but I just got to keep it real. It's TB12.
Okay, that's funny. Yeah, a lot of people don't want to give Tom his credit. It's cool. It's cool. I understand. I get it. Okay, so we're gonna go receivers. Randy Moss or T.O. Actually, I'll throw another one in there, or Jerry Rice. All 3.
I'm gonna say Randy, and I love Jerry Rice, but and even T.O. I mean, they both played for the 49ers. I'm still gonna go with Randy because I mean, just they always talk about how people don't want to watch long videos on the internet. I think in NFL.com there is a video of Randy Moss 40-yard touchdowns, right? So like just touchdowns that are 40 yards or longer. Yeah. Not all of them he has in his career. It's like 7 minutes long. And I will watch every second of it. Like it is phenomenal. Like the thing about Randy is like he gets off the line of scrimmage and like as soon as like he'll take 2 steps and he'll throw his hand up like I'm open. And like when he throws the hand up, like it's over. It's a wrap for you. Like that's it. Not to mention I funny story. I used to work when I was in baseball. One year our trainer had been a student trainer at Marshall when Randy Moss was there. And I remember he told me this story of it was at practice and near the end of practice, Randy was a star pretty much in college anyway. And he was off to the side. He was off to the side signing autographs for kids and everybody lined up on the goal line and you're supposed to run like a 100-yard sprint or whatever. And he said, Randy was off to the side signing autographs and they blew the whistle and everybody took off running. And they said this team's got like a 10 to 15-yard head start. Randy finished signing, handed the paper back, took off running, ended up winning the race by like 10 yards. Like, wow. Like that's how phenomenal of an athlete he was. And so like, yeah, he was so much fun to watch. So he's my pick.
Because speaking of that, like when he was playing with New England, I wish they could have won the championship that year, but I was just happy. I'm like, this is beautiful. And like you said, he threw up Tom, like him and Tom's connection. Like he threw up the hand on like literally off the line. Like he threw it up and Tom saw it. And I'm like, oh, that's a touchdown. And right. He has the beautiful one hand catch in the back of the end. I'm like, that is beautiful. This is just great football. You can't even be upset at that anymore. You can't be mad.
No, I mean, it's just amazing.
Amazing. That's my biggest sin that New England has is that they didn't get Randy a ring.
Yeah.
Okay,
I
blame
feel
Michael
bad about it,
Strahan.
but I
Okay,
also
blame Michael
like.
Strahan.
But yeah, also that would have been like the 18-0 season, which like
Yeah.
Patriots fans are already hard. Like they would have been insufferable if they had gone 18-0 and won a ring. So like,
Wow.
while it does stink that Randy didn't get a ring, that was a win for America. That's what Eli Manning. That was for America.
I'm not one of those fans, okay, but I do understand most of the people in Boston. They are definitely like that. I will say that. I will give you that for sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll give you that.
Yeah, I forgot that was that same season, so I definitely understand that.
He said that's a win for America. Jeez.
Yeah, so that means that if they should have just gone 17-1 and won a Super Bowl,
well, we should have lost. Honestly speaking, they should have lost it the second meeting with the Giants instead of winning it. They should have lost that one, and they would have been fine. They would have won Super Bowl, wouldn't have any problems.
Right.
That was my thought on it.
All righty. Barry Sanders or Walter Payton?
Barry. Just because he was so much fun to watch, man. Like, I mean, best description, like he's like a flea on a hot rock, right? Like you couldn't you just never knew where he was gonna be. Like one moment he's there, the next moment he's gone. I mean, Walter was smooth. I mean, that's why they call him Sweetness, right? Like he was so smooth to watch, but Barry was just like, Barry played the way we tried to play when we played two-hand touch in the street. Like that was what we tried to do. Right. Like you're jumping and juking and all kind of stuff. Like that's what we tried to do. So that's who I pick.
Cool. So if you could take over any organization, professional team, whatever, it doesn't matter, even Apple, Google, whatever you want to take over, which would you take?
I think I would take over the Raiders. Just because, like I said, I got a soft spot in my heart for them, and two of my closest friends are diehard Raider fans, and I see the pain and frustration they go through every season. Like I want them to have some joy, right? Like, and I want the Raiders, like God love them, right? They keep holding on to this commitment to excellence, this whole thing, right? And like they haven't won a Super Bowl since what, 83? I think it was January of 83 or 84, maybe something like that. Like it's been a long. There are multiple generations of Raider fans that don't have a Super Bowl championship, right? So like if they really want to hold on to this commitment to excellence thing, like like let's bring them back. And plus they're in Vegas, right? Like who doesn't love a great show in Las Vegas? Let's put a great show together. Like I don't think Vegas has had a great sports show since like the UNLV teams of the early 90s. Like when Tark was there and they had Larry Johnson and Stacey Augmon and Greg Anthony and all those guys. Like I think Vegas is hungry for a great show, and like, hey, let's give them one, man. Let's give them one with the Raiders.
Would you take the Raiders back to Oakland?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's where they belong, right? I mean, that's where their fans still live. It's the fan base is still hungry. I feel bad for the city of Oakland in the sense that they supported three teams for a really, really long time. And I mean, for years they were bad. Let's just be honest, right? Like the best thing I ever had as a kid is that we were the team nobody wanted to play in the first round, right? I mean, we had Run TMC, and that was kind of it, right? So like when they won that first championship with Steph and Clay and those dudes, like I never thought they'd get one. So the fact that they got 3 in 5 years is amazing. But even through all that down period, like folks showed up and they supported them. And the A's, who were great in the late 80s, early 90s, but even when they were bad, folks still showed up. And the Raiders, the Raiders left. They came back and destroyed what was a really nice stadium because they wanted to put extra seats in there, right? But even still through all that, people supported them. And now, the Warriors are in San Francisco, the Raiders in Las Vegas, the A's are thinking about moving. Like, I feel bad for the folks in Oakland who have supported these three franchises for decades and decades. And basically because, owners were a little bit greedy and wanted the city to pay for stadiums that the city can't afford. People have had their joy taken away from them. So like if I had the money, I'd build a nice new stadium in Oakland, probably on the site of the Coliseum. And I'd bring them home because that's where they belong.
Well said.
Yeah, I agree with that. I do. Yeah. Okay. Favorite sports moment you have either seen or witnessed?
For me, it's one of two. One, I've only been to Yankee Stadium once in my life, but the time I went was in 1998, and David Wells threw a perfect game against the Minnesota Twins. Yeah. That was pretty amazing. But I think the number one for me, it would have been on my 14th birthday. I got to skip school. It was a Tuesday, and we went to an A's game, and that was the day that Ricky Henderson broke Lou Brock's stolen base record. And it was great. Like, we had tickets. My dad, it was me and my dad and my best friend. We went, I got to skip school that day. We went there and we had really good seats. We sat on the third base line, and he stole third base. He was coming right at us. He did it. He stole third base. I remember Lou Brock walked past us on his way down to the field. And I went and I saw it. It was amazing. And the next day I went back to school, and all my friends were like, "You were at the game yesterday, huh?" I was like, yeah, I was.
I was like, and
so yeah, that's probably the one.
I was about to jump into X. Oh, okay. So if you could go pro in any sport, what would it be?
It'd be baseball. I mean, like I said, it was always the sport that I loved. And it's the one that I think, puts the least wear and tear on your body. I guess maybe golf would do that too, but I don't really love golf like that. So I think it's, you have the team atmosphere, you have sort of the fun of being in the clubhouse with those guys. There's less wear and tear. You can definitely play it longer. And if you play it at the highest level, the money is probably the best. I mean, look at what dudes like Mike Trout are making, and
Bryce Harper and all them.
Yeah, like what they're making
about half a bill
is insane. So that's probably the one for me.
Gotcha. Okay, I got two questions for you. So you got the Avengers versus the Justice League. Who you got winning that?
I'm probably gonna say the Justice League. Just because I think the difference between Marvel superheroes and DC superheroes is that DC superheroes, like when you read DC comics, it's a little bit of like gods and monsters, right? Like you look at Superman and him fighting like Darkseid, or you got even Wonder Woman, was sort of a god on Earth, or she was like a goddess on Earth. It really is sort of gods and monsters. Where Marvel, I think you find their heroes, I think, tend to be generally regular people that are faced with like extraordinary circumstances, right? I mean, you got Peter Parker, right, who's bitten by a spider. You get Tony Stark, who's really smart and rich, but he's a regular dude. He just is smart enough to build a suit, and he's got the resources to do it. Even like I said, Steve Rogers was a regular skinny scrawny dude who got shot up with a super serum and became Captain America. I think Marvel is more, and I think that's why their movies honestly do better than DC movies, because I think audiences sort of identify with the heroes more as regular people who somehow have superpowers blessed to them. Whereas like Superman came from he wasn't one of us. He came from a different planet. Wonder Woman lived on this island with other really strong, powerful women. She was in pretty much every way better than regular people. And I think that's a little bit harder to sort of, even Aquaman, I mean, is the son of a king and a queen, who lives undersea. Like that's just a little bit harder, I think, for regular people to kind of identify with. But they're really strong, so give them that.
Yeah,
super true. I think what the only regular person on there is Batman.
Yeah, I mean, I love the fact that it was I think it was Justice League, right? When the Flash is like, he's like, "So what's your superpower?" And he's like, "I'm rich."
True. So real quick, your favorite athlete or public figure you've been around?
Ooh, that I have been around. That's a really good question. I would probably say, it's funny because working at NFL Network, you sort of get to meet people, and you get to meet them kind of, in their off time and their downtime. Like I get to work with Maurice Jones-Drew, who is hilarious. Hilarious.
Yeah.
Who is literally the biggest trash talker I've ever met in my life.
That's what I heard.
Biggest trash, does not care. I mean, he obviously went to UCLA, right? And there are a lot of USC people that work at the network. I'm one of them. The first year he started there, UCLA football wasn't really good when he started there, but he went around to every USC person he could find, and he made a bet that the Bruins would beat the Trojans that year. And for that reason, that's the reason I have a picture of Maurice Jones-Drew wearing a USC football jersey. because it didn't work out. But he's really just a good dude. He's really fun to be around. And I think that's sort of been the fun part of working here, is that you kind of get to meet these guys and you get to see them, in kind of their everyday normal, and just have regular conversations with them about stuff. And that's been pretty cool.
So who's your Super Bowl favorite? Who you got to win the Super Bowl? If you could put early bets now, who you got?
I think I don't remember who I picked this year. I think I picked Chiefs over the Bucks this year.
Rematch.
I think it's a rematch. It's a rematch, and Mahomes and Andy Reid get their revenge this year.
I'll be so sad if it goes the other way. I just want you to know that.
Although here's the thing, I wouldn't be surprised if you see the Rams in the Super Bowl this year too.
That's another
Rams.
Because of Stafford, dude. Like
Stafford, makes all the difference. That makes all the difference. That defense is already really good, and they get the Super Bowl in their stadium.
Stafford though,
he didn't get no love in Detroit. Like
Detroit's been bad.
Yeah,
Detroit's been bad.
Exactly. Detroit is where you go to end your career.
I mean, Detroit makes you end your career early, man. I mean,
exactly.
Barry Sanders and Calvin Johnson were retired in their primes. That's how bad Detroit is.
That's what I'm saying. Like Stafford makes all the difference.
You say, I don't know about that one. I had to see it to believe it. I don't think so, man. That's a little bit of a that's like that. Oh, that's a stretch. A little bit of a stretch.
Plus, the Rams are going to be battle tested because that division is tough, man. They got to deal with the 49ers. They got to deal with the Seahawks. They got to deal with the Cardinals. I mean, that's 6 games on their schedule right there. Like they will be battle tested by the time they get to the playoffs.
I would take the Cardinals getting to the Super Bowl before I take the Rams getting to the Super Bowl.
Oh, I don't know about that now.
I mean, they got a young. You got Kyler Murray. You got
nothing.
One of the best receiver in the league with DeAndre Hopkins, and then I'm not saying JJ Watt is still JJ Watt, but he's still. You got to put some presence on that.
But Aaron Donald is still Aaron Donald, and Jalen Ramsey is still Jalen Ramsey. They got Robert Woods and Cooper Kupp. And
this is true, but I don't trust Stafford like that. I can't trust Stafford. I'm sorry, I can't. I can't do it.
All right.
Look, we'll have to create like a little email thread or something. We're gonna be like, hey, y'all see, I told y'all. I'm saying, I told y'all he wasn't gonna do it. I told you. The Detroit blood followed him right on to LA.
Oh my goodness. We'll see what happens. But Marcus, man, it's been an honor and pleasure to have you on the podcast. You survived the rapid fire segment, so thank you for all the answers and participating in it. But before we let you go, Marcus, can you tell the audience and everyone that's listening of how they can follow your career and where to go to follow you?
Yeah, the best place is usually just through Twitter. It's Marcus at Marcus G, MarcasG, spelled a little bit different. It's kind of where everything pops up, but I'm always doing stuff in NFL media. We do a podcast a couple times a week, and then NFL Fantasy Live, 5 times a week, 6 p.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. Pacific. Set your DVRs, and you'll find us there.
Okay. And then what was the name of the podcast?
It's the NFL Fantasy Football Podcast. Really straightforward.
There you go, everyone. For everyone that's listening, you already know to go ahead and subscribe to Capturing the Game on Twitter, CTG_podcast. YouTube is Capturing the Game podcast. Facebook, Capturing the Game podcast. And on Instagram is Capturing_the_game_pod. Y'all heard it here first, guys and ladies and gentlemen. If you're looking for your fantasy tidbits or just looking to follow an interesting dude, go ahead and hit up my man's Marcus. He's doing awesome things and has an awesome career. He has a lot left to go in the tank. So Marcus, we appreciate you hopping on today's podcast with us, man, kind of geeking out for a little bit and also talking about football, man.
I appreciate the invitation, guys. You guys be good.
You too, man.
Thank you.